Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's session where we continue with resume writing, which we had started yesterday. Some of you had queries about where you would get the materials, the recording, etc. The recordings of the sessions will be uploaded to YouTube and the links will be made available in your course portal. If you are one of those students who has already completed the course and so do not have access to the course portal anymore, you will receive the slides as well as the link to the recording via email. I can see that some of you who were here yesterday, Ananya was here yesterday, Pavak was here yesterday, are here today as well. Thank you very much for that. The others, please do not feel confused or lost. We'll just start with today's session. You can pick up on what you lost um, through the recording that will be available in the course portal. Okay. Like yesterday, today's session is also going to be recorded. I just want you to be aware of that fact. Yesterday, we had looked at what are the necessities of a resume, what should be there in a resume, how do we organize that information, how do we write or structure something for a resume. We looked at a certain method yesterday. Do you guys remember the method? The STAR method, in order to structure information which should be added to your resume. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result, and you can use this as a formula in order to condense any information into a form which can be incorporated into your resume. We've also seen that when we craft sentences for a resume, we need to give priority to action words. Action words are verbs. You head that sentence or that bulleted point with a verb so that the reader's attention is immediately drawn to the things that you did. You come across as a very proactive person as a result of this. It is due to a couple of reasons like this that we have incorporated resume writing into this workshop on communication skills, because essentially we are trying to say that a resume is also just an act of communication. Right. One of the tips that we had discussed yesterday was that we could start the bulleted point with an action word. Another tip is to always show, that is, demonstrate, instead of telling or blindly describing. For example, if you want to say that you are a hardworking person with great organizational skills, you can give them an example of a responsibility that you handled. I was elected the president of my club's finance committee. I was responsible for the accounts of 24 members and a yearly house budget of rupees 5 lakh. If you are not a hardworking person and if you do not have great organizational skills, you simply would not have been able to handle such a massive task. So you are, instead of describing or claiming something, giving an example or a demonstration of a situation where you have exercised these skills. Instead of saying that you are a responsible student, you can say that I have amassed so many credits during so many semesters at university, or that you have maintained a consistently high GPA. All of this clearly demonstrates to the reader that you are a responsible student. If you were not a responsible student, you would simply not have been able to do this. Okay? Is that clear to everybody?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now we are getting into the design and formatting element of a resume. We had looked at a couple of things now. We had looked at, by now, we had looked at all the things that need to be there in a resume. We had looked at how we can actually write a sentence that can be put into your resume. Yesterday, we received a lot of questions about where would you put a particular achievement that you have in your resume. Would you put it under education or would you put it under achievements? Would you put it under qualifications? So we had already addressed all of these queries. In addition to the content of a resume, the formatting of a resume or the design of a resume takes as much importance because, like we discussed yesterday, the people reading your resume are not going to be looking at that document with an active interest to read it entirely. They are instead going to be looking at the document with an active interest to quickly eliminate people whom they think do not fit their requirement. So we are trying to get through an elimination round, so to speak. So we need to put information on that page in such a manner that the reader can easily grasp the most important elements of your resume. One of the things that we can do in order to help with the design and formatting of our resume and in order to make the content more accessible to the reader is that we can write in bulleted points instead of long sentences or paragraphs. Long sentences require a long attention span. Nobody has a long attention span nowadays. So you write in short bulleted points, which very concisely explain the things that you want to convey. If there is some kind of information which you want to be standing out on the page, you can bolden that information. One of the things that allows a document to look professional is consistency. So if you start with one font combination, sometimes you use a single font, sometimes you might use two fonts, right? Let's say you're using two fonts in that resume document. Stick to that combination. Do not randomly use different fonts all through the document. If you decide that you're going to use a certain font for the title and a certain font for the following points, stick to that template. Do not vary from it. Okay? That allows that document to look a little more professional. Fonts are of two types, broadly, sans serif fonts and serif fonts. Sans serif fonts, this for example is a sans serif font. What you see on the screen is a sans serif font. A font like Times New Roman is a serif font. A serif is that little decorative stroke at the end of a letter form. Some fonts have that, some fonts don't have that. So you have to, it's up to you to decide what you want to use in your resume document. But we need to avoid using fonts that look too informal, like Comic Sans. It's not that the font is bad, you can use it for several other design purposes, but in your resume, your priority should be to use fonts that allow you to look professional. Therefore, we avoid fonts that look too informal like Comic Sans. If there are quantifiable information, your CGPA for instance, that's a number. If you have done something and you have um, had an achievement which can be quantified, for example, you initiated a certain step in a company and that increased their sales by some percentage, 25% maybe, that is a quantifiable achievement. If you have quantifiable achievement, use those numbers because numbers always tend to stand out on a page full of text, right? So if you use numbers there, if you use those numbers, it will immediately catch the eye of the recruiter. And that's exactly what you want. Remember, we add our CGPA, we already discussed this yesterday. We add our CGPA if our CGPA is on the higher side. We do not add our CGPA if our CGPA is on the lower side. If our CGPA is on the lower side, we'll have to make up for that by citing other relevant achievements or qualifications or certifications or experiences, right? So there are things that we want in our resume, there are things that we do not want in our resume. Among the things that we want in our resume, if there is quantifiable data, make sure to add it as a number. Then there is something called a parallelism. A parallelism is a writing strategy. We will see what it is shortly. Where can you find resume templates? Universities often have their own standardized resume templates. IIT Madras does have its own resume template, which you can get hold of when you are, let's say, applying for an internship or something. Other universities also have their own standardized, accepted resume templates. So if that is something that you want, you can find it there. There are also plenty of resume templates available on online tools or designing platforms. Canva, for example, resume.io, for example. This is not an exhaustive list. There are plenty of resume building tools available online. You can use any of those templates. But the template that you use should look professional, should allow you to structure information effectively, should not be wasting space with a lot of unnecessary things, designs, colors, etc. You can also find resume templates on Google Docs and in the Word doc thingy. Right. We had already discussed a writing strategy called a parallelism. What is this parallelism? Parallelism, quite simply, is using the same sentence structure for multiple points. Okay? Now, if you look at this one, we'd already discussed that the ideal way to start a bulleted point in a resume is by using an action word or a verb. Examine is a verb. Give us a verb, but give reasons is what you're. Okay. Unless you have a query, please keep your mics muted. Right. Explain is a verb. Summarize is a verb. Here, on the other hand, if you look at the box on the left, examine is a verb. Reasons is a noun. New is an adjective. Summary is a noun. Okay? Now, what effect does this have? This structure is called a parallel structure. All the sentences, all the bulleted points use the same structure. Examine the current dress code, give reasons for a change in the dress code, explain the new dress code, summarize the main points. Examine the current dress code, reasons for a change in the dress code, new dress code explanation, summary. Essentially, the content that is communicated here is the same. However, in terms of ease of reading and ease of understanding, a parallel structure is extremely beneficial. So this is not something that you do in order to aid the content that you're presenting. Rather, using a parallelism in your resume is something that you do in order to aid the reading of it. So this is something that you do with the reader in mind. If you use a parallel structure, the reading becomes easier. If the reading becomes easier, your content is more effectively communicated. So using a parallelism in a resume is a communication skill. If you do it the way it is done in the left side box, you are giving the same information. However, the reading of it is more laborious and the structuring of it is not as neat, not as professional. Okay? That is why it is always suggested that we use a parallel structures for the different points that we incorporate into our resume. Now, can I ask you a question? I want you to think of any one project that you've done as a part of your degree, any course as a part of this degree in data science, and I want you to summarize for me your contributions, that sentence which you would add into your resume, using a parallel structure. Let's say you did, I think you guys have something called a capstone project, right? Let's say you did a couple of very important things for your capstone project. And you can write that in 3 bulleted points. I want you to give me 3 bulleted points with a parallel structure. How would these bulleted points begin? They would begin with a verb, right? All of them should begin with a verb, verb. Right. Can you do this? Are you all asleep? Can you not hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So it's just a little bit of a starting trouble. That is understandable. If you do not want to speak, I get that. Just tell me that you do not want to speak. Okay. I don't want to force anybody to speak, but it would be really nice if you could, you know, write a few bulleted points and then tell me what those points are. Because a resume is not a it's not a theoretical exercise where I teach you. A resume is very much a practical exercise. You need to learn to write. Build those sentences. So take a few minutes. Give me like 2 or 3 bulleted points of any project that you've done. Then I'll call out names, and when I call out your names, if you do not want to answer, I will respect that. It is fine, but it would be really nice if at least 1 or 2 of you could answer. Right, 2 minutes. I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. I'm just giving you 2 minutes to prepare. Okay, I see a very good answer in the chat box. If you do not know about this project thing, that is fine, Ananya, no worries. Yash has given us a very good answer. I'll just read it out for the sake of the rest of you. He has been working as a council member and coordinator of web admin team. He is quickly listing out what his responsibilities are. Okay, so Yash, I have a question. Um, are these responsibilities that you're currently doing, or are these things that you have done?
Some of them I have done already, and some I am currently doing also.
Okay, so you have to be careful about the tense of it. If these are things that you're currently doing, yes, present tense would be more apt. If these are things that you've done, then past tense would be more apt, right? So look at these points. Manage the official LinkedIn page showcasing society activities, events, and achievements. Manage verb. So that is his first point. The second point, curate and post daily chess puzzles in the WhatsApp puzzle group to engage and challenge members. Work in the web admin team to enhance the society's online presence, ensuring seamless functionality across digital platforms. Contribute to content creation by designing posters and editing videos for society events and promotions. Collaborate with the content and digital teams to develop engaging content strategies and drive community growth. Those are very well structured points. Yash, thank you very much for that. But I would still suggest making them shorter. Now I feel like some of these points are rather long. They do read like descriptions. I would really suggest making them even more concise. But they do demonstrate parallelism very well. Thank you very much for that answer, Yash. And we have
Welcome.
okay, we have an answer by Niharika. Create and manage calendar. Okay, you will have to mention what calendar there. Assign work to graphic designer and video editor. Good. Do scripting of video is okay. You don't need to write do scripting of video. You can just write scripting videos if this is scripting, right?
Okay, ma'am.
Or if it is not scripting, if it is adding subtitles, then you can write subtitling videos.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, so ma'am, for example, in calendar, it's a monthly calendar which shows the works and the post. So I would have to write it create and manage monthly calendar. Is that
For
correct?
whom? Like that is the question. For whom? Whom does this calendar serve?
So ma'am, it's the Instagram page or like any activity by Gearhouse.
By your house.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then you would have to write house calendar
Okay, ma'am.
because that would also give a description of what sort of calendar you're managing.
Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Served as deputy secretary of a club under Girls in Research. Wow, nice. Indicating leadership and organizational skills. Worked as a coordinator in the Avasya, I think, Aerospace Society, demonstrating involvement in aerospace related activities. Very good. I would still suggest once again making these bulleted points even shorter. They should jump to your eyes. Less description, more bulleted points. If you want, you can split a point into two bulleted points. That would be nice. Sonu, proficient in video editing software such as Final Cut Pro and DaVinci Resolve. That's
Thank
not a
you,
bad.
ma'am.
That's not a bad sentence, but it would be better if you can add it in terms of actual projects that you've done. Any one project on which you worked, and what did you do in relation to that project? How did you use this video editing skill in that project? That would be nice. Conducted market research, managed team, built models, not built. If you are trying to use the past tense, it should be built. Pitched report. Now, built models and pitched report needs more clarification. What model did you build? What report did you pitch? That question would be there. So there should not be ambiguity in your bulleted point. Supports user registration, enables role assignment, implements access control. So Danny, I feel like you have listed out the features of the system that you designed. I want you to list out features of the things that you did. Okay? This is not a bad description. It is a very good example of parallelism, but this is not the kind of stuff that necessarily goes into your resume as such. Instead, your contributions, what you did, should be given priority. It's a very individualistic thing, this resume.
Am I audible?
Yes, Danny, please go on.
Ma'am, so if we are to list the projects that we did in our resume,
Mm.
so do we describe them like what it had? Like, for example, the features that I mentioned here, or do we
Yeah,
just
so these, they would not come under your work experience. Instead, they would be selected. You could add a section called selected projects, maybe, where you could use all of these bulleted points. That would be very acceptable. Okay? But that wasn't the question that I asked. That is the problem here, I think. So I
no?
wanted to see how you contributed to a certain project and how you could construct bulleted points out of the things that you did towards the achievement of that goal. Now, what I want here is a short description of what did you do in order to make this web-based examination system that is so good. How did you do it? Whom did you work with? What was your contribution? That is the question here. All of those details would go under work experience. Got it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
All of these details would go under selected projects.
Got it, ma'am.
And work experience, if you have to make a selection between work experience and selected projects, work experience needs to be there in your resume. Just a second, Trisha. Okay. Trisha, go on. You have a question.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I just wanted to ask, like, can we have two different sections? I mean, is there any limit of sections that we should have in a resume?
What do you mean by sections, like titles?
Yes, like work experience plus projects plus selected projects, like that.
I mean, I wouldn't suggest adding projects plus selected projects. Work experience and selected projects can most certainly be there. But you have to watch the length of the resume. Remember how we said yesterday? A resume is never more than 2 or 3 pages long, and a 3 page resume is a long resume. So you should have that skill of summarizing all of this key information into 3 pages max, 1 to 2 pages preferably.
Ma'am, there is one word, like much of a trending word nowadays, that is ATS friendly resume.
Hmm.
So what's that ATS friendly? Like how much word limit is there something, or there is like some 90 points or 100 points that we should achieve to get our
Okay.
resume listed?
ATS we had discussed yesterday, but we can do this once again towards the end of the session. Okay?
Ma'am, I was not present, so I'm so sorry.
It's fine, it's fine. We can discuss this again. I think we also got a question about ATS yesterday towards the end of the session. So it's good that you brought it up. It's fine. We'll just go through these slides and after that we'll get into ATS, which is applicant tracking system. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Right. In terms of formatting, these are things that we've already discussed. Clean, organized. Your resume should not look cluttered, should not be messy, should not be chaotic. All the information should be clearly readable. Do not use very complex designs or graphics. And color palette should be professional. Very somber looking colors. Very professional. I am going to work kind of colors, right? White, off-white, gray. You can use other colors, but whatever palette you choose, stick to it. Just like the font combination. Don't just, randomly throw colors around the page. Ensure consistent alignment and formatting of fonts throughout the resume. Alignment and formatting show that you have paid a significant lot of attention to details. And attention to detail is actually a very valued skill as far as hiring managers are concerned, right? So these little mistakes, if there is an inconsistency in your alignment, people will immediately notice that. Make sure that that doesn't happen to you. Then there is something called visual hierarchy. Important things go on top, less important things come under that. This is called visual hierarchy. You should use this to your advantage in a way that would be helpful to you. Then there is the strategic use of white space. White space is this, all the space that you see between the title and the content, between the different points here, all of that is white space. Using white space strategically is very important because white space gives your page a balanced appearance. This is exactly what allows your page to not look cluttered. Clutter is what we must avoid at all costs, right? This is an example of visual hierarchy. In the first case, we are drawing In the second case, we are drawing attention to the degree that this person studied, right? This is the difference between the two. And what is the how do you do that? How do you draw attention to any one particular facet of your resume? You do that by using visual hierarchy. Whatever you want your hiring manager to notice first, you put that on top. Whatever they want to whatever you want them to notice next, you put that under it. That is very simply what visual hierarchy means. Now look at this. Can you tell me which one uses white space better?
The first one.
First one?
Yes,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
first one uses white space better. I'm really sorry. I think I lost my connection in between. Am I audible to you now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
right. The first one uses white space better. What does that mean? There is more space between each bulleted points. What does that do in terms of reading? It makes reading much easier. You can very quickly scan through this box and take in information at a single glance. Supervised, managed, sold. All of that just jumps into your eyes. And that is what you want in a resume. This is a sentence. Once again, look at this. There's no difference in the content that you're trying to communicate. There's only difference in terms of
I managed free sales clerk, surprised the month, and sold.
Govinda. Are you talking to me? No, you are not. Okay.
No, I mean wrong.
Okay. There is no difference in terms of content. There is only difference in terms of formatting, and that is a huge difference, as you can see. What are some of the common resume mistakes that we make? Spelling errors, grammar errors. You need to be very careful about those things. Overselling your skills, that is, claiming that you have skills which you don't actually have. Don't do that. Okay? Your career is something that you build, right? So maybe you start off with a basic set of skills. You start off in a position like that, and then you rapidly pick up skills. Then you learn to highlight the skills that you actually have rather than claiming skills that you don't have. That is what makes your resume a strong resume, highlighting the skills that you actually have. Using generic statements is also a huge no-no. What are generic statements? Random descriptive sentences which do not give a concrete example of how you used a skill. That is a generic statement. Avoid those. If your resume is too long, No one is going to read it. Do not make a 5-page resume. If your contact information has changed, if your number, for instance, has changed, put in the updated number, not the old one. Now, we make these mistakes usually when we made, let's say, you made a resume in 2022 and you're still using the same resume. All of these mistakes might happen, right? So the idea is to update your resume periodically. A resume grows. It grows with your career. It grows with you. You should be careful in order to give your resume a chance to grow, right? Including references when they are not asked. References, we'll get to see what those are really soon as we go further ahead with the presentation. Now, failing to include information about hobbies and interests, this can be true. This can be a negative in some cases. For example, if you're going to work in publishing and you are an avid reader, you read everything that comes your way, you love books. If you're working in publishing, mentioning the fact that you love books can be a positive. Not mentioning the fact that you love books can be a negative. However, in some cases, let's say you're going to apply for a managerial position, where reading is not one of the essential skills that are required. In that case, mentioning that you love to read novels might not be required. Okay? So you have to understand that all of these are very context-dependent things. In order to avoid these mistakes, you need to proofread your resumes, you can seek feedback from others, and you can use online tools to check for plagiarism and grammatical errors. All of these can be very helpful. Now we come to the final section of our presentation, where we look at cover letters and references. Oftentimes, we need to add a cover letter along with our resume. And what is this cover letter? It is a letter of introduction. Usually, it goes with your resume. It is something that complements your resume. And it should provide a quick overview of your skills and qualifications, and it should clearly communicate to the person who is looking to hire you why you are interested in this certain job. Why is a cover letter important? A resume is a factual document, right? It lists out a lot of facts about your life, your education, your achievements, etc. But a cover letter is a subjective document. If there is one particular reason that is motivating you to go after this job, that becomes clear not in your resume but in your cover letter. So you're trying to make a case for yourself by writing a letter to your employer. You can expand on the relevant experiences that you have, and you can express how you have a genuine interest in this company. A cover letter is also a very good tool to match you, not just as a candidate, but also as a person, to the culture of the company. It's called a culture fit. Okay? So whether or not the culture of the company, the ethos of the company is something that matches you, quickly comes across in the cover letter that you have written. Sometimes there might be a project that the company is currently doing which you're very excited about. You can write about that in your cover letter. A certain goal or vision that the company has with which you would also like to join. You can write that in your cover letter. So do not look at a cover letter as a bad thing which we also need to do in order to apply for a job. A cover letter is a great opportunity to make a case for yourself. The format of a cover letter is the format of any formal letter. It should have the to address and the from address, that is contact details. It should have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. In the introduction, you start with your name and you mention the role that you're applying for. You give a quick overview, you expand on your qualifications and your skills, and you communicate how excited you are in order to work for this company, because working for this company is also going to allow you to reach your career goals. These are all subtle ways in which you find alignment with the culture of the company. You are saying, I don't just want this job. I'm excited for this job because I know that this opportunity is going to allow me to grow in my career. And as a fresher, a cover letter is a wonderful tool for you to push yourself into the sector that you want entry to. Okay? In the body of the letter, you can discuss your recent professional role. You can give an overview of your past accomplishments. You can flesh out all that information in greater detail in a cover letter. A resume has that limitation of being only able to accommodate bulleted points. A cover letter gives you a greater space for communication. You can also explain to them how impactful your achievements or your accomplishments have been. If you can quantify your accomplishments, do so in the cover letter as well. When you conclude, you give them a formal thank you and you express your interest in continuing with the hiring process. You say something like, I hope to hear back from you soon. Okay? That is ending the letter on a very positive note. After you've written a lot about the things that make you uniquely qualified for this position, things that align you to the job description at hand, you're also telling them, I know that I'm the exact fit for this job, so I hope to hear back from you soon. I hope you will go ahead with this. I'm looking forward to hearing back from you. Right. These are the things that must be there in a cover letter. What made you apply for the job? What is your motivation? How your work experience meets the job's requirements? Can you demonstrate the fact that the skills that you've acquired so far are going to aid your employer's company? In order to do that, you look back into your work experience so far and you argue that this is exactly what this job description also demands of a candidate, and I can give you that. Right? Look at how communication is an effective tool. Look at how something as simple as a letter. Cover letters are mostly sent as emails nowadays. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. But at the end of the day, it's just a letter, but it's a very powerful tool. You can give concrete examples of your skills and you can end the letter with a call to action. A call to action is just like we discussed, a hoping to hear back from you soon sort of a sentence. Right. References are mostly relevant in the case of an academic application. If, for example, you're making a PhD application, you will need to add references. You do not always need to add references. So check the job description. Check the vacancy that has been listed, the advertisement, or however you came across this job posting. Check that once again. Check if they're asking for references. If they are asking for references, give them references, right? Nowadays, most academic applications are made through a portal that the university website will have, right? So all of this is highly automated. So you would not actually need to compile a list of references. You would simply need to enter the information into the right place in that portal. However, if you need to manually compile a list of references, this is how we do it. Look at how many references you need. 2, 3? Mostly your references need to be professional references. Either your supervisor or your professor or your academic mentor. All of these people can be your professional references. Unless you're required to give a reference, you do not have to do it. Before you give Now, a reference, the person who gives you a reference is called a referee, right? Before you give someone's name as that of your referee, you need to ask for their permission. If it is your professor, for instance, you need to go to them and you need to ask them, may I please give your name and your contact information as one of my referees for this particular application. You will most likely also need to give them a copy of your CV or your resume so that they can give you an effective, a very good, a glowing reference, right? Do not add someone's name or contact details without seeking their permission or their consent first. That is highly unprofessional. If you need to manually compile a reference, this is how it would look. The name of the person, what position do they work in, how do you know them, in what capacity do they work. This is what is known as a designation, which is a word that you would be familiar with if you have written any kind of a formal letter, right? So you are giving their name, their designation, their company address, where do they work. This person works at Carleton University, right? Their contact number and their official email address. Usually for references, they will only accept official email address, not personal email addresses. You have to keep that in mind. You also give a short description of how you know this person. In what capacity have you interacted with this person? How are they qualified to give you a professional reference? You clarify that with a short description. So and so was my professor at Carleton University. While I completed my Bachelor of Arts from 2007 to 2011, I worked with Allison on special language projects upon request. So you have worked with this person. They do know how well you work, how hard you work, what is your work ethic, what is the quality of your work, what kind of a person are you. They know a lot about you, and so they are qualified to give you a reference. Any questions so far, apart from the ATS one? Just a second, Rakhi. I am trying to find the ATS slide. Yes. Okay. If we have several years of experience, then should we give the reference of the past organization, even if not asked? For a job application, that is typically not required. But if for some reason it makes you feel more confident, then you can do that. Typically, the question of references arises only when they are asking for a reference, or if you are making an educational application, like for a PhD or for a, let's say, a professor position. If you have several years of experience, you can, however, summarize all of that using a resume summary. This is also something that we had discussed in yesterday's session. So I also would like to know if the reason you're asking this question is because you did such an exceptional job in one of your past organizations, so you feel very confident about the fact that somebody would give you a glowing reference. Is that why you're asking?
No, ma'am. Actually, I have worked as an assistant professor only, and I'm applying at a new place, so that's why.
Okay, you are working as an assistant professor. You are going to apply for the same post or some other post?
Same post also, or any other post also related to, like, I am presently doing this data science course, so any other post also, and same also.
Okay, so typically in those kinds of applications, a reference is not required. But if you feel more confident about your resume with a reference, You can just add in your resume, references may be provided upon request. Okay? That is also an acceptable thing to do.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Right. Now we get back to the ATS question. An ATS is an applicant tracking system. Nowadays, most applications are digitized. I am not a very digitally literate person. I'm sure that all of you are more digitally literate than I am. But all of us know that most applications are digitized. So the first level of screening is not done by people anymore. Your resume would be put through the checking of a software which can scan the keywords or the fit of your resume with that of the job description. One of the ways in which you can ensure to get through that first level of screening is by using the same keywords that are used in the job description in your resume as well. If, for example, that job description specifically mentions the knowledge of certain software or certain certifications, if your resume also has those same words, then you would immediately have a high ATS score. You would pass through that first level of screening. Sometimes it can be skills like leadership skills or communication skills, managerial skills. If there are these phrases used in your resume, that will allow you to get past that first round of screening. Okay? This is why the customization of your resume, according to the job description for which you're applying, is extremely important. Don't use the same resume to apply for several different jobs. That also shows that you are not invested in the opportunity for which you're applying. Be very careful, be very diligent. Purposefully customize your resume for each application that you are making. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You can also use some tools. This is not an exhaustive list, but these are some tools, some online tools like jobscan.co, resumeworder.com, Topline Resumes, in order to see whether you have a high ATS score. This is just a quick tip, right? After you've made your resume, in order to see how well it fares in relation to applicant tracking systems, you can use such online tools. Okay, 1 second. Samarth Ajit, I'll answer that question. You can use these tools so that you feel more confident about your own resume. Right, that is it about applicant tracking systems. I hope that is clear to everybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. May I get the link for yesterday's PPT? You will get the PPT as well as the link to yesterday's recorded session in your course portal. That is, if you have access to the course portal of English 2. If you are somebody who has already done the course, then you will get the link and the slides in your email. That is what I've been informed. Can I include profile picture in resume? And is it necessary to include school information in resume? Profile picture in resume is not very necessary. Sometimes a resume is a very, there can be a crunch of space in a resume. There's very little space on 2 pages. You would have had some significant career achievements, and so you need to already squeeze all that information into 2 pages. And oftentimes a profile picture can be a hindrance in terms of space management. and it really doesn't do much for you. You're not going to get hired on the basis or the merit of your picture. Okay? So I would not recommend adding a profile picture in your resume because that would be an unnecessary element, a hindrance rather than an enabling element on the page. Is it necessary to include school information in resume? Depends on what your highest qualification is. Okay? Let's say, okay, I can only give you my example. I do not come from a data science background, okay? I did my master's in English studies from IIT Madras, and that was several years ago. Let's say you have a master's degree at this point. In that case, your 10th standard is not important. You already have a much higher level of qualification, so you do not need to mention that. But let's say somebody with, let's say, 12th standard qualification is applying for a job. In that case, yes, that would have to be included. It depends on the level of your qualification. Remember, a resume is something that grows. If you have grown past the point of school education in your educational qualifications, you can omit that. If you feel like you have not grown past that point, you will need to include that. It is a very subjective decision to make. Is that clear, Priyanka?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else? Is that all? Okay, I guess that is all. When none of you respond, I get really worried whether my connection has been messing up again. Okay. Thank you everybody for joining today's session. That is the end of our workshop session on resume writing. I genuinely hope this was helpful for you. When will the link be available? Any timeline? I don't actually know about that. Another team is in charge of that, but it will be made available soon enough in the course portal. I cannot give you a timeline. I'm really sorry, Sneha. I hope this was useful to you, and I hope that someday you will all make such stellar resumes that will allow you to land several interviews and several jobs. Thank you for joining me. That'll be it for today then. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.